The world looks to California to answer the hard questions, for redemption, to introduce the unfamiliar, to be resilient. Because California bounces back, holds us accountable, values who we are, remains vigilant, defies those in our way, and stands for community. Here on the West Coast, we're at the center of it all. Los Angeles Times, the state of what's next.
Hello, my name is Erika Smith, and I'm a columnist with the Los Angeles Times. Welcome to our special screening of the critically acclaimed short film, The Beauty President. It's being presented by Breakwater Studios, Hillman Grad Productions, and LA Times Studios. In 1992, in the midst of the HIV/AIDS crisis, LGBTQ activist Terence Alan Smith launched a historic run for president of the United States. He ran in drag as Joan Jett Black with the goal of empowering the queer community in national politics. To kick us off, here's a word from the film's executive producer, Lena Waithe.
Hello, my name is Lena Waithe, and I'm so honored to be an EP on The Beauty President. It's a short film that really documents one of our greatest pioneers, and I'm really honored that Whitney captured Terence in this moment, and I hope that you enjoy watching this journey. It's a short film, but it's a mighty one, and this is someone that you should know. And if you didn't know about him before, I'm glad you get to learn. If you did know, I'm glad you're getting a refresher. But it's important that we tell stories like these so that we don't forget people like Terence. Hope you enjoy The Beauty President.
Because I've always loved politics, I saw an opportunity to be a politician, you know.
And who am I? Well, I'm Joan Jett Black, Queer Nation's candidate for president in 1992. That's right, we're gonna put a drag queen in the White House.
At some point, I realized that I actually made a little dent in history.
Everyone has a voice. They keep telling us everyone has a voice, but what do we hear? Absolutely nothing. That is not a voice. Everyone has a voice when I get elected.
When I came out, you heard about gay people. This whole broad community, you felt like you were a part of. It was like being at the forefront of this great new world. First thing that brought it into it was AIDS. Not many groups of people have had to deal with your friends dying at an early age like we did.
I was watching you walk down the street, and a lot of people were shaking their heads. What do you say to those people?
I say that they don't know beauty when they see it. They should be shaking their heads at George Bush being the president of America and not doing a damn thing about AIDS or health care. That's what they should be shaking their heads at, not me.
The government responded very slowly. At first, they ignored it completely because it wasn't happening to people that they care about. It wasn't happening to, you know, middle-of-the-road white people. It was happening to Black people. It was happening to drug addicts, and it was happening to gay people. Doctors didn't want to touch you. You know, and we all lived in, okay, what do I do if I get it? You know, who's going to take care of me? What's going to happen? Our thing was visibility. I mean, we were still being beaten up. We were dying from AIDS. We were being denied jobs and housing, and, you know, and the more visible we made ourselves, the less that happened.
I'm sure you all are wondering what we queers are up to now. Well, we're going to the White House.
The presidential campaign is one of the most worldwide visible things. Everybody talks about it. It becomes a huge issue in the media. So when the presidential race came up, all right, let's do that.
I'm going to be the beauty president, and everything's going to be beautiful.
We decided I was going to do that. We went in City Hall and filled out the papers. to be a write-in candidate.
Ronald Reagan was elected president. Now, if a bad actor can be elected president, why not a good drag queen?
Then we got the opportunity to do the convention, the Democratic Convention in New York, 92, that year. And boy, that was really something, because it was kind of scary. We were going to be gay press. We had press passes. Well, that day, we figured it out that they were not going to let me walk in the convention in full drag.
You know, it's obvious that they don't want us to get anywhere near this convention. This whole situation is not for everybody. It's only for a select few. But that does not include us, because we could not get anywhere near. And if that doesn't include us, then it doesn't include 98% of the people who are watching this.
What I decided to do was go in, not in drag, right? I had to go into the men's bathroom in the stall and did it in there. I was almost done. Some guard comes in. Somebody probably told him, there's a woman in there. So he came and knocked on the door. He said, hey, this is the men's bathroom, right? I said, there's a man in here. But then they came and they handed the pass over the top of the stall. And he was still standing there, and I opened the door and was like, bye. So we get on the floor. Every camera that saw me went, right? But when they asked me, are you supporting Bill Clinton? I said, no, I'm running against Bill Clinton. They were like, what?
Oh my God, Joan Jett Black, the only drag queen presidential candidate in the United States. And I'm down here on this floor saying hi to all of America. Why, look, hi, America. Oh God, this is so exciting. Look at all these people, hi, y'all. So here we are, bringing queer issues to the campaign, right here, right now, in a dress.
But I said, I really am running for president. And they were like, well, what would you do if I said, well, healthcare. We should have healthcare. Period. I was going to take the military budget and the education budget and switch them. I was going to fire everyone in Washington and hire my friends just like they did. We were going to do all of that.
What are you going to do for the military of the U.S.? Well, I'm going to ban the military, so we won't have to worry about the military banning homosexuals.
What would you do about this police state, Joan? What would you do?
Well, first of all, I'd fire them all of them. I don't think we'll have much crime if people know who's really protecting them, you know what I mean?
I tried to make as much sense as I possibly could out of where I was and the voice that I did have. And that's what people heard.
A deep and profound change is needed in our attitude toward the world, our life on it, toward each other, and toward our conceptions of what is politics.
Once you get rid of all the hate and all the anger, then things run smoothly. And that's what's never happened in this country. It was founded on who's better than whom. And once we're all equal, then it'll be smooth and no one will take advantage of anyone else. So it'll be very easy.
Yay for Joan. Yay, Joan.
The name of the next president of the United States, Joan Jett Black. Joan Jett Black. Joan Jett Black. Joan Jett Black.
This being able to talk to people is not an accident. It's something that I use for good. Somehow it actually worked. That our being more visible made it a little bit easier. I can't help but think about all of my friends that are long gone. There isn't a day that goes by that I don't think about some of them, or one of them, or two of them. I have this little thing that I do before I go on stage. Beauty before me, beauty behind me, beauty to the left of me, beauty to the right of me, beauty above me, beauty below me, beauty all around me. And I think of my friends. If, we don't say their names, they'll go. going to go away. So we have an opportunity to keep their power alive by not shutting up.
Welcome back, everybody. Hope you enjoyed that and learned a few things. I know I did the first time I watched it, and watched it, I think 3 or 4 times now. But I want to introduce our panel, who's going to be here to discuss that. First, we have Terence Alan Smith, who we just saw as Joan Jett Black. And we also have Whitney Skauge, who is the director of the film. So I wanted to welcome them both. Thank you both so much for joining us.
Thank you very much. Thank you, thank you. Hi,
Thank you. Hi, Terence.
Terence, I'm actually going to start with you. You know, yeah, I'm going to start with you. So, you know, you touched on this in the film, particularly at the end, about, you know, what you were experiencing in the 1990s. But I was wondering if you could expound upon that a little bit, particularly for some of the younger folks who might be watching, who may have been like 2 or maybe not alive when this was happening. Can you talk a little bit about what your life was like and what it was like to be queer back then?
Well, it was a little riskier than it is now, although it doesn't, looking back, it's hard to tell. But, you know, and at that time, this was 1990, friends of mine had been dying since 84, easily. So I lost many friends and a couple lovers to AIDS. And there was this feeling that you had to do something. You had to get involved. I was also a member of the Radical Fairies, so I was involved in a few different ways. And there was this feeling that if we didn't do something, no one else was gonna help us. So we got out there and got in the streets and made things happen. And that created this wonderful camaraderie that we still have now, those of us that are still here. And that's worth everything to me.
Mm-hmm. We in a previous conversation we had, you talked a little bit about the power of not shutting up, I think is how you put it. You know, in that vein, can you talk a little bit about why you decided to run for president in the first place, and, you know, how the mission of Queer Nation figured into that?
Well, you know, it goes way, way back. My mom always said I was a ham, and that, you know, I could just get in front of people and, you know, perform or something. And I had been doing drag off and on since '74. So, you know, I had this character, or a couple of different ones that I could blend together. And I thought, well, you know, I ran for mayor of Chicago before I ran for president. So I was already a seasoned politician. And I had a lot of fun doing that. So we just took that and put it in this run for president. I hope I answered that question. I'm not sure if I did.
No, it does.
Mm-hmm.
So you ran, I didn't realize you ran for mayor of Chicago too. That's, I love that.
Yeah, that was.
So Whitney, how did you first learn of Terence's story, and why did you feel compelled to make this film?
Well, I first found out about Terrence from an article that I found online. I work at Breakwater Studios, and I was doing some research for another project, and I came across this article that essentially said 1992 drag queen runs for president, and I read it. And there's a photo of Terrence as Joan at the podium. And as a Black person, as a queer person, as a politically minded person, my brain kind of exploded, and I couldn't believe that this was something that had happened that I didn't know about. And ultimately, the reason I decided to do this project was in this really intense desire and feeling of responsibility to preserve and celebrate Terrence's story. As a queer person, and again, as a Black person, there are so few heroes that we get to interact with. And the fact that Terrence is still here was felt so important. And as a documentary filmmaker, you just want to capture things so they don't get lost. And that was really the biggest driver for me, was that I felt like this was a story that truly deserved everything in the world. And I just wanted to be a part of doing something about it.
So how did you go about contacting Terrence? What was that like?
I think I found an email, and then I emailed him, and we had like one phone call, and we hit it off right away. And I think within maybe 2 weeks to a month, I was up in San Francisco filming. So I think Terrence and I both would agree that we have kind of this unspoken bond that is kind of cosmic, and it just felt like we landed in each other's laps at the perfect time. We shot this during the pandemic. I mean, we're still in the pandemic, but we shot this in 2020 at the height of things. So it just felt like a lot of synchronicities were coming together. And so meeting Terrence the first time, it was one phone call, and then we went up and we shot.
Terrence, what did you think of meeting Whitney? I mean, what was that like? I mean, here's somebody who hadn't really heard your story, wanted to know more. Were you kind of, surprised, or were you like, oh, that's just one more person that wants to know about me?
Well, it wasn't just like it was one more person that wants to know, but I'll tell you, I was very excited. I learned a long time ago to say no to nothing. If somebody asked you to film something, yes, sure, let's go. Because you might not get asked again. So that's gotten me into some, wonderful places, absolutely. And like what you said, we hit it off like that, which I'm not surprised at. I seem to attract women who are the only Black. I worked with another filmmaker years ago that was the only Black female lesbian from Glasgow. So Montana is no, I'm like, yeah, I'm not surprised. So, we all stick together somehow,
Yeah.
And I felt that right away.
It was really interesting in the film, just kind of, going down, seeing the footage, obviously, the archival footage, but also just like hearing you talk about Terrence, about what it was like on the trail and how people were approaching you, particularly that scene about how you had to like change in the men's bathroom, which is, yeah, somehow typical. But, what was it really like on the trail? I mean, how did people, other than, the footage we saw, how did voters and journalists and people kind of, respond to you? Were they taking you seriously? What was the general reaction?
I was lucky because the media they needed something to, kind of laugh at. So they had me, and they really, I didn't get treated badly at all. They would ask questions. Only a couple of shock jocks on the radio were like, "So, you're just Black. Why do you want to, what's the president address?" That kind of thing. But once I started talking, they were like, "Wait a minute, this kind of makes a little sense here." And I always said, they told us anybody could be president, so here we are. I'm gonna prove that, maybe somebody like us, more like us, can. Because if you look at them lined up, you go, nope, no. So I was one that people would go, oh yeah, maybe.
Yeah, it was interesting too, because I mean, you were arguably, in drag and definitely in spaces and in front of people that some people were probably never seen somebody in drag before, but definitely in spaces that weren't used to seeing anybody in drag. And I think it was in a previous conversation, you talked about drag as armor, which I thought was really fascinating. Can you talk a little bit about that concept of like bringing queerness into, these spaces that historically haven't seen that?
Drag queens have always been somehow at the forefront of a lot of different eras of gay life, or somewhere in there. And we do, it's just one thing to be in a bar doing a show and, that kind of thing. But to take drag out of a bar and put it on camera in the daytime in front of people was, then you instantly, that's your armor. That's your drag is what protects you, but it's also, it's the first thing people see, but it is your armor. I mean, it's it makes you stronger. It just does. Once you put it all on, you got nothing else to do but go, and whatever happens. And I love that about it. I love that.
Yeah. It's interesting too to see, since 92, well, it's how many things have changed, but one of them has been this kind of broad-based acceptance of, of people in drag. I mean, the success of RuPaul's Drag Race, I think everybody knows that by now. But and this is a question to both of you. I mean, and maybe you, Terence, maybe you can start, but talking about in some ways like the commercialization of drag, right? Like, what has that been like to watch over the last, 40 years? God, that's crazy. Or 30 years. Yeah, I mean, it's a long time. But like, what has it been like to watch that arc of, going from where you were, where people were just like, didn't know what to do, to now there's like watch parties for RuPaul's Drag Race?
Yeah. At first, I would say, I would think, no, I don't know, because drag will never be completely mainstream. It just won't. It's just one of those things. But I can't tell you how wonderful, because when I first started doing drag, my heroes were Hibiscus and Sylvester, and people like Charles Pierce, who were doing shows, and who else? Jim Bailey. I could go. The list is pretty long, but now, I always think of the drag queens that are in Kansas. Those are some brave girls and drag kings and guys down there. It's all across America now. Now you have 10-year-old drag queens. I worked at a different light bookstore in San Francisco, and I swear to you, a kid came in once and with his parents who wanted to do drag for his school party, and he's like 10 years old. So, I mean, it's reached that far that anyone who feels like they want to do it can do it. And that's what I mean by visibility. I still think that we won that war. We won the visibility war, because after, each generation made it easier, and now it's Emmy-winning television. So, we did our job. We did.
Yep. Whitney, did you want to expound on that a little bit? I mean, what's it been like in your lifetime just to see, drag go from where it was to where it is?
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting. Terence kind of brought up the fact that I'm from Montana, and growing up in Montana during the George Bush era was very interesting, because I grew up during the time when people would say, that's so gay as an insult. People would say no homo as an insult. The list goes on and on. But I think what I've seen in my time is like really this understanding that queerness is not something to frown upon. And I remember I had a teacher that called someone out for saying that's so gay, and it changed my life. And I think Terence is someone that continually calls things out, right? And Terence's generation called things out so much to the point that my generation could come in and hopefully pick up the torch. And now what we're seeing happen is that you have a generation where, I mean, you have gender, you have sexuality, you have so many different things that are being deconstructed and understood in a way that has never been understood before. And I think the reason that is because of the groundwork that was laid from generation to generation to generation. And, you know, I kind of relate to Terence in that it's a complicated feeling because for so long, this population was marginalized, not even marginalized, they were abused, they were killed, they were not taken care of. And so to have a society now where you can have a 10-year-old drag queen, that's pretty incredible, but it also gives you this like tension feeling where you're like, we're not fully out of the woods yet. Like you have to acknowledge everything that's still going on. This has been the highest year for death for trans and non-binary people. So we are not done yet, you know, but I think in terms of where we've gone, I have to give a lot of credit to Terence's generation for the visibility play. You can't be it if you can't see it. And you also, you can't, essentially what I want to say is you can't beat us all up, right? So the more that we're all out here doing things, the better.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Yep. Bravo. And you have to keep coming out all the time. You know.
You're always coming out. You're never not coming out. And I think like what we're seeing is like we're seeing more and more people come out. But with that comes more and more conversations, comes more and more looking back. I think, Lena at the top was talking about how important it is for us to acknowledge those who brought us to where we are today. And, I just think like, it's just so incredibly important to understand that this didn't happen overnight. Like, it wasn't like RuPaul came out and the Drag Race show came on and everything was good to go. Like, there was a lot that had to be done for us to even be having this conversation.
Yeah, one of the things that was really interesting, in the film, and Terence, it talks a lot about your campaign. I mean, if you look at, a lot of what you were talking about, the stuff that we're talking about today, I mean, whether it's, police brutality, criminal justice reform, military spending, healthcare, obviously, how do you think, in some ways, I mean, what you were saying is something that a Democratic candidate would say on the campaign trail today. How do you think?
I was Nation Party. Oh no. Yeah, go on.
Yeah. No, I was gonna say, how do you think somebody, or the public would respond to, your candidacy today? Like if you ran in drag today, what do you think the response would be?
I'm afraid I get shot today. But because we didn't have the what are they, the poor boys or the whoever they are. We didn't have them running around.
Boys. You were
Proud Boys, yeah. We didn't have them running around back then, and that's something to be concerned about. We didn't have an insurrection back then. People were still, you could still use satire to get a point across back then. And I don't know if that doesn't fall on deaf ears now. That's one of the things that happened is that the media got it, and they knew that what I was doing was satire, and I was able to use it. I mean, they loved it in Chicago when I ran it against Rich Daley, because no one had ever done that, and certainly not a black drag queen. They were like, this is a riot, and they treated me well. They didn't treat me like a stupid person, and I was glad of that, because I was worried about that. I thought, oh, this is going to be ugly, But like I say, once they started asking me questions and I gave them answers, they were like, oh, I mean, I talked about legalizing weed. Here we are in California, and it's legal now. Thank you very much. So, hey, some things do get done.
Yeah. Absolutely. When did you realize that, how much impact on history your campaign had? I mean, was there a moment where it was just like it kind of had dawned on you, or has it been, happened over time?
It's still dawning on me. I'm still like, because, I really didn't expect it, even though I was on TV and was in the press and had made, a few inroads here and there. I certainly didn't expect I'd be talking about it 30, 40 years later. You know, I really had no idea that this would all happen, and it's very moving to be a part of, part of history. History, somebody's story. But it's really wonderful and moving to be a part of that, because I never expected this to happen. I didn't think it was going to fade away completely, because I wasn't going to let it. But it's just tickles me to death that I'm sitting here right now talking about it. You know, it's like, wow, I never would have imagined. When I was in that bathroom stall, that was the last thing I was thinking about. You know, I was just thinking about getting out of there alive, because that was the belly of the beast, let me tell you. You know, but it was a lot of fun. It really was. And that made it all live. Mm-hmm. You know, we had the Secret Service. We had Secret Service agents go into the room before I did. So, you know, Americans are easy. You can fool them. They believe, they'd be like, what's coming? What's coming? What's that? You know. Then I would walk in waving, shaking hands. It worked every time.
Do you have a favorite story, you know, from that time, other than the changing in the bathroom? Is there any other kind of really outrageous story?
One of the things that I've always loved is that year, 92, we, as Queer Nation and ACT UP, marched in the St. Patrick's Day Parade in Chicago, which is a big deal in Chicago. Senator John Cullerton gave us his spot there. So they did not know we were coming. All of a sudden, they look up and, you know, here we come with my campaign, Jones Act Black Presidential Campaign, and they were like, they were so shocked. The judging stand, they turned their back on us. But it was also a little nerve-wracking, because this was the same year that in Boston, they forbade them to march at all. So that, you know, and we took it, and we said, not here, you know, not here. So that was a wonderful moment for everybody. And that was one of those times that you feel, I don't know how many demonstrations you all have been in, but boy, the camaraderie that happens after a demonstration like that is the best in the world. One of the best feelings in the world. And besides, we lived. St. Patrick's Day Parade, you know, I was as Irish as I could be, but, you know, I tried.
Well, I'm gonna ask you a couple more questions, then we're gonna take a few from our audience. But this is to the both of you. I mean, looking at everything that's changed since '92, and you know, from same-sex marriage to, as you were talking, Whitney, about conversations about gender identity. What do you see in that arc, and kind of what do you see ahead for the LGBTQ plus community?
Wow.
President. I mean, why not? I mean, I think the whole point of what Terence was doing and his lasting impact is the importance of representative politics, right? If you don't have representation in the highest body of government, who's gonna take care of you, right? And so I think what I'm really been excited about in the past couple of years has been the rainbow wave. So seeing a lot of LGBTQ plus people get elected to local politics, to state politics, and hopefully more and more to national politics. I think the only way you're going to see the progress that we're all dreaming of is when the people that are affected by the problems that policy needs to correct are the ones that are there writing the policy, right? Like, I just feel like we need more and more people, queer people, Black people, brown people, LGBTQ people. I mean, all the people need to be in government, because like, that's where things happen. And I think the thing that Terence says about visibility, you know, it's tough because there's a lot of representation in media, and that's great, but it hasn't fully transferred into policy. Yes, there's same-sex marriage. Yes, there's things that have been fought for a long time, but you're still struggling with trans youth in bathrooms. You're still struggling with, healthcare. There's so many things that are still on the table. And I think what I would really love to see is this next generation take what Terence did and crank that to the nth degree and run.
I want to say that we are going to have to be stronger as a community than we ever have been, because you must remember that the Supreme Court we have now could take same-sex marriage away. They could make that happen, and they're that conservative. So, you know, we're going to have to really be on top of things now, much more so than we were back then, I think. You know, now we've kind of gotten a little, yeah, we can get married and everything, but this Supreme Court it's ugly, and it's going to be ugly for a long time. So we're going to need to be a lot more vigilant than we were before, and more unified.
Yeah, that
And
makes
just
sense.
going off of that really quick, Terence, sorry, Erika, I just wanted to say that I think that something that I think is also really important is recognizing the people that were already doing the work and then acknowledging them and working with them. So working with people like that are still here and around. You know, he talked about the camaraderie. I think it's really important for people my age and younger to interact with the older generation and to hear their stories and to understand this sense of camaraderie that Terence was talking about. So that's just the only other thing I wanted to say, was that I think it's really important to do cross-generational work as well, because I think you can get so embedded in your circle. But if we're really talking about this cohesion that Terence just laid down, it has to be all across the spectrum.
But that's what you just did with this film, girl, because, you know, so yeah, we're on the path, that's for sure.
That is for sure.
Well, thank you both. I'm going to ask a couple of audience questions now. Got about 3 or 4. We'll see how many we can get in. The first one is from Felicia. And I guess this is probably to both of you. Do you think that shows like RuPaul's Drag Race have helped people understand and accept drag as an art form? And how do you feel about cisgender women being drag artists? I don't know who wants to tackle that one first.
Terence, I'll let you speak to it since you've done drag.
Yeah, I was going to say, yes, it is an art form. Of course it is. I mean, you know, you have to, I don't know if you know this, but every drag queen that you ever see anywhere, you have to say, you look fabulous. Even if they don't, you have to say, you look fabulous, because they, believe me, they didn't walk out of the house unless they thought they did. And cis women, yeah, look, if you can have a 10-year-old boy as a drag queen, you can have cis drag queens, you can have, although I'm still a little confused about all that. I don't know where I stand in that. But yeah, I always say, what is it wearing? If it's wearing a dress, you know, that's why I like drag kings too. You know, people are like, you know, I'm like, yeah, well, but there's room for all of it, and there should be, you know. So.
Yeah. And I think, like, speaking to the popularity of RuPaul and Drag Race, I think it has helped. I mean, you get language, right? And you kind of peel back the curtain and you see the normalcy of it. And if you've seen the show, it's very dramatic and it's, you know, heightened entertainment. But I think, you know, it starts the conversation. And it's an entry point, and that is important. And I think that is the lasting impression of media representation, is that it's an entry point. It shouldn't be the only interaction you have with communities you aren't familiar with. But I think what media can do is it can break the barrier, and it can make it a lot easier for people that wouldn't normally be accepting or be interested, have an avenue to go down that. So I think there's nothing wrong with RuPaul's Drag Race. I think, you know, it has its lane and it's doing a lot of great things for the culture. But I do understand the need to go beyond just the commercialization of drag, right? I think there's more to it.
But look at the talent that RuPaul's show has brought. Todrick Hall is amazing. Bob the Drag Queen. I mean, this is wonderful, because we didn't have production values like that in the 70s, I'll tell you. You know, we did shows too, but we couldn't do shows like that. So, it's just wonderful to see that happening.
Definitely elevated the art form and made it more expensive, I'm sure. For sure.
Okay, for a lot more expensive.
Okay, this one's from Bray, I believe is how you pronounce their name. How can we eliminate the fear and misunderstanding between the Black and LGBTQ community, which I know is a big one. I've written about this in the past. That's a huge question. I'm actually really interested to hear what both of you say.
I would get in trouble because I have a definite answer for that. But I think, all I'm going to say is I think it has something to do with the church. Anytime, I think it's something to do with the church. I can't go into it now. The LA Times would be very upset with me if I said what, but it, in some ways, that those Christian beliefs have held people back. And if they can't get, a lot of times that's the first, you're in a Black family, you're the first one they've ever heard of. And, but if you look at the examples of, well, I'm going to say Little Richard, but there's so many examples of church going guys who turned out to be gay as well as, and the church is a big thing in the Black community. So there's got to be some work done there. And there's got to be the whole masculinity thing. And, as quiet as it's kept, Black people are matriarchal, not patriarchal, okay? Angela Davis, remember the Million Man March? Angela Davis said every single one of those men had to ask their mother or their wives if they could go. And I was like, thank you, Angela. So, there's a lot of work to be done there. There is.
Yeah.
Whitney,
what do you think?
Man, I mean, that's a big question. And I always have to preface things that, as a light-skinned person, I'm not interacting with the same type of conflicts that someone darker skinned might interact with. I have a lot of privilege in that way. And so, for me, it's very interesting to think about the intersection of my queerness and my Blackness in those two communities. But I think ultimately it's understanding that there is an intersection. And I think what happens when you're talking about disparate marginalized groups, there's this kind of, how do I phrase this? There's almost this like oppression scale, right? And it's like, well, I'm more oppressed than you are. And so you need to understand where I'm at. And it's like, we're all oppressed. We're all under the patriarchy and white supremacy and capitalism and all the things that are not really helping us as a community. And so I think just understanding that our problems are interconnected, our struggles are interconnected, and that we are not that different. Like, I think, you mentioned Angela Davis, and I'm going to bring up Huey P. Newton for a second. I mean, the Rainbow Coalition, that was like mind-blowing, right? And I think that's what we need to be getting towards, is like bridging the gap and understanding that our problems together can be solved greater than disparately.
And just in a small way, in the mid to late 70s, we were doing it I know it's going to sound weird, but we were doing it on a dance floor. We were getting everyone together on the dance floor. And it's no accident that music talked a lot about unifying people, because that's what we believed we were doing. And we were. I think that's why they brought it into it, because it was getting too good. It become this wonderful, and I mentioned that in the movie, we had become this wonderful, strong community that all of a sudden had to stop and, deal with saving each other's lives more so than, so that, that took a lot of the excitement of being on a dance floor away. That's kind of coming back a little bit, but I don't go out anymore. I'm too old, so. But that was something that was real for us back then.
Mm-hmm.
Back
Yeah. Well, last question, and this one's from Bianca, but I feel like this is probably a question a lot of people have is, how can we support you now, Terence? Are you planning on another run for president, or are we?
No, I don't think so. Well, I'm hoping to do I used to have a talk show here. I'm hoping to start doing that again. I've just got a website, so we're gonna, try and do a few things there. But I'd love to do that talk show again. I was like the drag Oprah for a while, and I would love to do that again, but probably on this medium, Zoom, so I don't have to go anywhere. But something like that, because that was a way to stay up on what was going on in the community. Anything I could do to do that, because I'm working on my book. You can always, should I say this? Can they donate? I don't know. Donate to the Jones Act Black Fund if you want to.
Yeah. I'll pick it up for you, Terence. You don't have to tell people what to do. I'll tell people what to do. You can go to TerenceAlanSmith.com and you can keep up with Terence there. We have the film there. We have old photos there. You can also donate to support Terence's other endeavors. And then there's also a shop on there where you can get Joan Jett Black swag. So, TerenceAlanSmith.com is where you can keep up with Terence and support him.
It's amazing. I'm actually going to go there right after I get off this Zoom call. So, but in any case, thank you both so much for taking the time to talk to us. It was super enlightening, educational, hilarious, all of the things. So, and thank you everybody else who tuned in, and I hope everybody has a good night.
Yes.
Thank you, Erika.
Thank you, Erika, so much.
Thank you both.
Yes. Well, that's Miss Smith, and with her red glasses. Love her. Ciao.
Ciao.